Oh yeah, we've talked busts for category leagues. We've talked sleepers for points leagues. But now it is the all-important busts for your points leagues. And I'm sorry to tell you, if you pick these guys, I think you're a loser.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and did we ever find out what happened to Olivia Newton-John's husband that disappeared? Partner? I don't know. He just disappeared. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at LockedOnFantasyBasketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms, so give us a thumb and a double bang. We've done points, sleepers, and busts. We've done points, sleepers, we've done category sleepers and busts, and now it's time for points, busts. Let me just always, again, be very, very cautious when saying this. We can put titles on things and busts and all that sort of stuff, but in the end, there is so much variance in fantasy basketball, maybe less so than in other sports, but it still happens. And when you're talking about players at 30, at 50, at 80, it's 2 fantasy points that might separate them 20 different spots. And there are many different ways that things can go. Unexplained injuries, benchings, form slumps. Too many baddies, not enough baddies. I don't know. Which one's worse? All of these things can factor in. So when I say busts, all it is I look at the ADP, I look at the rank on each site, and I look at my own numbers. And I go, is this like 12 spots or more too high? Because that doesn't sound good to me. But it is not that hard for players to jump that far. So, while I said you're a loser if you take these players, of course I don't really mean that. But it's more just examining guys where I go, that's weird. Is there more downside than upside? How likely is this to happen? You might have a different view on a scenario, and that is totally cool as well, because I know that you guys are very smart, you're very cool, you're very locked in, you've locked on, in fact, to what we're doing. Or to what you're doing, more importantly. Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl is off and running, drafts are going. Yeah, the drafts will finish. I know you'll be worried about it, some of you. Man, these slow drafts. It's amazing how many of you have never been in a slow draft before, but yeah, they're slow. And if we start pushing up against time, the timer just comes in. It's just what happens. It's how it works. Good luck. What else do we need to talk about here? What else here? No, that's it. I think we're good. Let's get in now and talk about Yahoo. Let's talk about the top 50 players. Let's talk about guys for a Yahoo Points League format. And this is the video where I think there are more discrepancies on Yahoo than there on ESPN, because ESPN defaults to points, as Yahoo does as well, which again is another discussion for another day. The discussion is it's bad, but they do that anyway. But ESPN has a separate ranking list for points. Yahoo does not. So they're trying to thread the needle. So there are going to be plenty where I go, well, yeah, in categories that makes sense. For points leagues it doesn't. And I'd say there's probably more category players as a percentage on Yahoo than there is on ESPN. So ADPs sort of slide more on Yahoo towards sort of the category side of middle, whereas on ESPN they slide to the points side of middle. So I actually think there are more discrepancies when we're talking points league on Yahoo than there is on ESPN. Shocking, I know. Let's talk about Yahoo at the top end. Steph Curry probably needs to do a little bit more for the Warriors this season. I think that's fine. He probably will. But his ADP is 12. And for a category league, that's okay. That's reasonable. But for a points league, that's just not really what Steph does. Throw in the risk of injury at his age, and he just isn't the player that at an ADP of 12, I think, makes a ton of sense. To me, he's like more of a back-end, second-round points league player. And if you're taking him at 12, there is risk in that. That does not mean that it is 100% a bad decision to be taking Steph there. I just think that there is, it's one of those ones where we conflate Steph's greatness, and he is great. We conflate Steph's greatness in category leagues and then think that it always carries to points, and it doesn't always. So just be aware of that. That we may be not necessarily in that spot where he needs to be taken. This guy is on all my bust lists this season, and it's Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant remains awesome. Kevin Durant remains someone that if you take him in the second round, I actually don't think it's a big problem. Honestly, I just don't. I won't do it because I've seen trends that I don't like. They could reverse. But I'm not relying upon a 36, 37-year-old to play 75 games and play, was he 36, sorry, to play 37 minutes a night in under a Mike Budenholzer system when free throws, usage, assist rate, free throw rate all fell over the final 30 games of last season. And free throw percentage will go back up. Feel good about that. I'm not sure about the other stuff. So I'm just not into it. And like Steph, KD has always been below in his points league rankings where he is in his category league rankings. His ADP is 15, his rank is 19 KD. And with the age-related risk, with the category league bump that he receives on Yahoo versus where the points league value is, I don't see it. I think he's like a 30-ish sort of player. Chet Holmgren is going to fall into the same spot. His ADP is 17. All right. We can have arguments. And I had one with... God, who did I argue? Oh, Dan Paolo the other day about Chet. He thought that I was being harsh on Chet when I was saying that I didn't love him as a draft pick this year. And again, I do really like him. But like he's going high in spots. His ADP is 17 at the moment, Chet. There are people who are taking him at the turn of the first round. For a points league, I don't really get that. He averaged 16 and 8 last season with 2.3 blocks and 53 and 79 in a Yahoo default format. I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's doing what it needs to do. To pick him at 17, now he could take a step forward. There's absolute possibilities of that. He can do that. He could improve. He could play more minutes. All that stuff is distinctly possible. But Chet was 52nd per game last season. 52nd. He averaged under 37 fantasy points, which is a pretty good number. But ADP 17, the 17th ranked player last season, averaged 44. It's a big jump, yeah? And I'm not willing to do that. I'm also, like Steph, like Durant, Damian Lillard has had many, many awesome seasons as a category league player, as a high-end guy, a top 10 player. But over the course of his career, he has not been that guy for points leagues to the same degree. Last season, Damian Lillard was 29th in points leagues. His ADP is 23, his rank is 23. In category league, I think that's pretty good value. In points leagues, I'm not sure that it is. So is it necessarily a bust? Maybe. I don't know. But I actually think Lillard has a chance of not being as good points league-wise this season as last season. I think that's possible too. He could be better. I just don't love it there. I got Paul George with an ADP of 27 and a rank of... ADP of 28 and a rank of 27. Again, this sounds weird because I've been all aboard the Paul George is ranked too low train. I have. Because I believe that for category leagues very clearly. He was 44th in points leagues last season. And yeah, he was playing with Kawhi and Harden, and now he's playing with Maxey and Embiid. And if Embiid goes down, it will help George's numbers clearly. But I'm just not investing in him at that spot. And this is, again, the clear difference. In a category league, I'd take Paul George there every day. I'd probably go top 20, honestly, for him. For a points league, that's useless to me. I wouldn't do this. Maybe the end of the third round. I'm just not going to look at him in this spot. And we get to another one. And I think you'll notice, and sometimes I can be long-winded. No, Josh, never. No, I can. I can talk a little bit too much for some of this stuff at times. I can be a bit convoluted sometimes. And I don't love always going with a blanket rule because it never applies to begin with, but it can be misconstrued. But I'll throw this out as if you want to simplify stuff, and I think that's a good thing to do. You want to simplify stuff. The way that we can see the value of these guys, where Yahoo provides a rank and an ADP, which is split between formats. These players, Steph, Durant, Holmgren, Lillard, maybe Lillard less so, but Lillard's still there. George, Markkanen, who's the next guy, who's got an ADP of 31, Lowry with a rank of 21. The commonality between them, I think, being overvalued in points leagues is that they have strength in high free throw percentage and pretty good field goal percentage, which does not translate to the same degree in category leagues or in points leagues. Markkanen, 48 and 89 and 90 last season. That's great. That 90, one of his better categories. Doesn't matter. The thing that matters in points leagues, the highest correlation to production in a points league, is how many minutes do you play and what is your usage? That's it. They're the two, like, unbelievably, and I can correlate everything. Fantasy points with minutes, fantasy points with usage, fantasy points with, category league value with minutes, category league value with usage, points correlated with threes, and turnovers correlated, everything gets correlated. And in the category side, the two highest correlations, as you know, are turnovers and assists and turnovers and points. But the two most highly correlated things across everything are fantasy points and minutes and fantasy points and usage. It is almost 1-to-1. I think it had an R of like 0.92 or something. It's almost 1-to-1. Your usage goes up, your fantasy points go up to a similar amount. And Larry was a 24 usage player, and he's ranked at 28th. And you know what I'm going to tell you? I'm going to tell you where he was ranked last season, the big fella, the big Finn. He was 37th on a per game basis last season. So we're looking at that going higher than that, about a round maybe, and the risk of not playing through March and April. And big fella Josh Lloyd, does not like it. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's spooky season. It's Halloween, especially for you guys in the States. We don't celebrate it as much here, but everyone's got a fear. Maybe your fear is that drafting Larry Markin in a points league will ruin your team. And I say that it won't ruin your team, but it's not a fun idea. There's always going to be something that scares us. You might have fears of things that are rational. You might have fears of things that are irrational. That is totally fine as well. But it's how we approach them. It's how we get through them. And sometimes the greatest fear you have is the friends you made. No. The greatest fear that you have is not approaching your fears to begin with. And I know that sounds, again, convoluted like this whole show. But BetterHelp can help you get back on track, confront your fears, and figure out how to deal with them. If you've been thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's easy. It's online. It's scheduled to your schedule. Whenever you need it, it can be there. You fill out a questionnaire. They match you with a therapist. Bing, you got someone in there. Bang, you're ready to go. And if you don't like them, well, you can change over to a new therapist free of charge. So overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Go to betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so as you are well aware, we are doing points league busts. Let's go more to the top end players. There's a lot on Yahoo that I think are just in the wrong spots. Jaren Jackson. Massive variation in his block numbers last season. We know that kills his fantasy number, his category value. And has an impact on his points league value, but not to the same degree. But this, again, is trying to thread the needle for Jaren. That's just the name of this show, I guess, Thread the Needle. Last season, Jaren, with Jar out all season, with Bane out most of the season, Jaren was 38th in points leagues, which, again, is not far off a rank of 35, is it? No, it's not. Josh, you know the answer. It's not that far off, but do we really expect that Jaren is going to have the ability to get as many shots as he did last season? Because I don't think so. Jackson had one of the highest usages of his career. In fact, it was his highest usage, 29, with 32 minutes, averaging 22, 5, and 2 with 1.6 blocks. If he averaged 17 points a game this season, it's more likely to me he averages 17 than 22. And he's just not, I don't think, going to be in this area. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for him to repeat what he did last year. Miles Turner. This is the next group of guys that we can put a blanket rule over. The players whose category value is based on defensive stats. In fact, nearly all of these ones are, apart from one of them on this list. Miles Turner, ADP 44, rank 46. In a category league, I think that even might be a little bit high in a category league as well. But in a points league, what are we doing? He played 27 minutes. As you're well aware, scream it in your head. What correlates? It's usage and minutes, and that's not enough. And he's not a high usage player either, Miles. So when we take a look at this, when he's at 23 usage, 27 minutes, averaging 17 and 7 with 2 blocks, like that's great. But also, he fits the initial rule as well. Good field goals, good free throws. And defensive stats. Category league, wet dream. Points leagues, well, it's a different sort of puddle. Rudy Gobert has an ADP of 46, and again, it is the same thing. Now, he doesn't benefit from having high free throws because it's bad. But he's a low usage player who some of you, not me, but some of you think will lose minutes to Naz Reid. He just doesn't do enough. It just doesn't matter. That's not enough for him in a points league format. And the same goes for defensive legend Derek White. I love Derek White. You know that. I'm a big Derek White guy. But also in a points league is not his bread and butter. It is not what he brings to the table. Derek White has a rank of 42 with an ADP of 49. And even for category leagues, I'm a little bit out on that. But last season, he was 68th in points leagues. And I can almost categorically say taking Derek White at 42 is a terrible move in a Yahoo points league. As much as I love the man, and he might see 22 usage instead of 19 because of the Porzingis absence, that is a long way to go to get to that spot. A long way to go. And we just do not want to do it. Frederick VanVleet, I know that I talk about VanVleet being a sleeper in many spots, and many of you hate it. You hate that idea. You disagree vehemently, which is a fantastic word. But I'm going to throw the old cat amongst the pigeons because VanVleet's a bust. He's terrible. He's a loser. He's useless. When we're talking points leagues, his rank is 32. VanVleet makes more sense in a category league because of assists, because of steals, gets out of position blocks. He's very good at free throw percentage. And most of that does not compute. He is a low usage player. And low usage players are not awesome in points leagues. And I know there will be someone, again, that will say this, well, Josh, actually, there's this guy who's a low usage player. He's got real good value. It's all relative, isn't it? VanVleet last season wasn't super far off this, to be honest. His rank was 32 this season. It was 36th last season. But I'm also, as much as you might think that I don't believe that VanVleet's going to touch 37 minutes again. I think 36 is more reasonable. I think there's a chance that at age 31, usage goes from 20 to 19. They haven't lost anyone. They've added players. And as much as I still love him for category leagues, this is not it for points leagues. And I'll say the same thing for Franz Wagner. Someone call me out, and that's fine. You can call me out on comments all the time. I cop it all the time, and that is reasonable. We can have debate. Someone said, you think that Franz Wagner's shooting will go back up? And I do. I said, then how can he possibly be a bust at pick 44? That was in the category discussion. Well, okay. There is validity to that. I understand that part of it. In a points league last season, Wagner was 61st. He averaged 34 fantasy points. He's ranked 44th at the moment. For reference, the 44th ranked player was 38 fantasy points. It's about 4.5 to 5 extra fantasy points per game. Again, showing that there's not a huge difference in these spots. We're talking 20 ranking spots and it's 4 fantasy points. I just don't want to take Franz there because what's the upside that, again, this is another great blanket rule. I'm throwing so many blanket rules at you. You're going to be like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. You're stitching it all together. The blanket rule here is that, like, if I'm taking someone at 44, have I got equal chance of him bettering that than being worse than that? And if it's a 10% chance that he equals it or betters it, and 90% chance he doesn't, well, that's a terrible pick. Even if he finishes 50th in points leagues, what was the point of 44th when I thought there was no way he could beat that, or very, very small way of beating that? It's like a balance. If you sit in the middle of a number and you go, well, I think there's a good chance he beats it, but I can also see how he doesn't, well, that's fine. If you go, well, there's a big range of outcomes, but 5% of that outcomes are better and 95 are worse, well, I'm not touching it. That is a bust, even though it could still work out in a positive manner. And that is one of the things one of the ways that I approach things. If we look now in the 50 to 100 range of Yahoo, I think I might be talking too much. Jeez, Josh, come on. Jarrett Allen, 51st, his ADP is 51. That's cool. But in a points league, why would I do that? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't look at him there. Doesn't make sense to. Mikal Bridges has an ADP of 54 with a rank of 64. And I am very open to this discussion because we just don't know what's going to happen with the Knicks. There are so many different parts and pieces and big minutes and Tom Thibodeau's and all that sort of stuff. And Bridges has had 2 iterations of his career. He's like the Pokemon evolving. But does he devolve? Does he re-evolve? Like, what does he do? I don't love him at 54 with a rank of 64. I don't really love it in category leagues. And I definitely don't really love Mikal Bridges there in points leagues because last season he averaged under 33 points a game and 74th. But you could say, well, what if he gets defensive stats back? What if he gets efficiency back? Will he play more than 35 minutes? And maybe. But what is it about? Usage and minutes. Will usage be higher than 24.4? Probably not. Will minutes be higher? Maybe. And he still needs to get ahead of this. So, no, we're not doing it. Talked with Matty G earlier today from Inside Fantasy Sports, and we talked about Jalen Durant, the big passport legend. I said I was worried about upside and minutes for him and what they do with Isaiah Stewart. And I'll say it again here very clearly, just in case it doesn't cut through. I do not believe for a single second that Isaiah Stewart is going to start over Jalen Durant. I don't believe it'll happen. I won't rule it out. If you said to me last season, hey, James Wiseman could start over Durant, I categorically told you there is no way that is happening. He is terrible and it will not happen. With Stewart, I don't think it's happening, but I could go, okay, maybe because of the shooting. But my thing has always been, Stewart played 31 minutes last season, now he's a backup center and he's playing 18 a night? Is that what they're going to do, really? And you take Durant at 52 with an ADP of 54, well, you're expecting that he plays 30 minutes because he played 29 last season, he was 67th. There's no point in that. Brandon Ingram has an ADP of 65. Ingram might be able to improve his free throws 4 to 5% from last season. That is possible. Could he have a random jump in steals and blocks? Maybe. I don't care. My issue with Ingram is, A, on this team with Murray and Zion and CJ, does his usage go down? Probably. Does his assist rate go down? Probably. Does he sulk and complain in the corner? Maybe. Does he get traded? Also maybe. So I'm not doing it at 65. What's the point of that? Now, he is a better points league player, usually, Ingram, than categories. He was 50th last season, so he's the rare guy where his points league ranking last season was actually better than what his ADP is now, and I still don't like it. I also don't like the poop cookie Michael Porter Jr. with an ADP of 70 and a rank of 82. Part of the reason that Porter has appeal and people like him, I'm not one of them, people like him for fantasy category leagues is because, he's shooting free throws really well. He's going to get you some rebounds, 16 and 7 last season, 17 and 7 last season with 2 threes, 2.5 threes, on good percentages. But it doesn't matter, does it? And losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope does not mean that he gets more shots, because KCP was a 12 usage player. But you know who does join the team? Russell Westbrook. You know who likes taking shots? Yeah, Russell Westbrook. So Porter was 90th in points leagues last season. So to say that I am absolutely hating that ADP of 70, and I've got an old ADP. That's an old graphic. I should have updated that. We're not doing it. And the other one is Brook Lopez. He is a better category league player than points league player, clearly. His ADP is 74. His rank has been all over the place the last week. He was 100th best player last season. We do not touch this one with a 1,000,000-foot pole. Do not go near it. Absolutely a terrible points league pick to get Lopez at 74 or 82, one of the worst that you could do. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans can get a big return to the season on FanDuel with America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you're in there watching it, you see something develop, and you go, I think I know what's happening. So you get in there, you take a look, you're watching it with your eyes. That's how they work. You talk with your mates, you're high-fiving. Is that what you do? You high-five people? Maybe you do. And if you don't do that, that's okay. You can high-five yourself. You can rub your scalp. You open your phone. You look at the bets. They're all there on the screen. And also what's there? What is it? Oh, my God, it's stats. It's live updating stats. And the second thing that's there, unbelievably, is the play-by-play. It's all there. The one spot. Eyes, stats, numbers, bets. Place one. If it's your first one and it's $5, you also get $200 in bonus bets that FanDuel will just chuck into your account. That's guaranteed. So go to FanDuel.com right now to get started. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. I don't know if you guys have seen this app before. Irrespective of FanDuel, these next guys don't sponsor me, called Game Changer. My son's playing baseball, as many of you are aware. So he's playing this app called Game Changer, which is basically, it's like the MLB app, and it just updates live. In play, what's happening. It shows you ball strikes. As I'm watching the game and I've got this app up and it's showing me all these stats, but it's showing everything live in play. Unbelievable app. Crazy. Ridiculous. Live updating stats for Division 2 Victorian baseball. Unbelievable. Anyway, loved it. Fantastic. Is there more Yahoo ones? Of course there is. This one is a little bit injury related, but even then, Devin Vassell at number 70 is it's okay. But I'm just not doing it for injury's sake. He was 73rd last season. This one just is not one we want to do, and we don't know when he's going to be returning. Drew Holiday has an ADP of 77 with a rank of 74. I think there's just a little bit being put into the fact that Kristaps is out, and that means big bumps for a lot of these players. Drew was 95th last season. Just not interested in him at this spot. Older player, not caring. Keegan Murray, somehow he's a worse points league player than he is a category league player from what he did last season, and they're expecting a big jump forward for him, and I am not. I'm not expecting him to jump forward, even though it's year 3, because DeMar DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox, and Domantas Sabonis are going to have the ball a lot, and Keegan is not. Keegan had just 18 usage last season, when Harrison Barnes was the other threat. 15, 5, and almost 2 assists with a steal. Doesn't really cut anybody's mustard for a points league whatsoever. So you shouldn't be worried about Keegan Murray as an option for you. He wasn't even a top 100 player last season, so do not touch it. I'll say the same with Jabari Smith, a guy that, in theory, can be a pretty good player. Jabari, he averaged, but just 29 fantasy points. That's not enough. Is it ADP 81 would suggest you need to expect a big leap forward. Where is he getting the usage from? I don't know. And the answer is he probably isn't, so we leave it alone. The Clint Capella one is going to be just based on, I guess, what you think is going to happen at that starting spot. He played 26 minutes a night last season, Clint, and he averaged 31 points, which was good for 80th. He's ranked at 104 with an ADP of 92. I just think he probably does less than that this season, so I'm just not willing to do it at that position. Which, if he played 26 minutes a night, it's actually not bad value. I'm just not sure that he does, so I won't. And then here we go again, back to this guy thrives on defensive stats. He's really strong in category leagues for some people, but that then does not translate to points leagues, and his name is Herb Jones. Jones is ranked at 99 with an ADP of 99, and if you heard this story before, stop me, but he didn't do anything close to that in points leagues. He was barely a top 150 guy, averaging under 25 fantasy points. So, when you're sitting in your draft room in the points league and Herb's at the top of the list, please just ignore him. Just don't touch him. Don't even bother. Honestly, not even sure he's a draftable player in 12-team leagues. And you will say, well, he's great though. That's silly. Cool. I'm not doing it. There's more on Yahoo. Naz Reid. I'll say now, I don't fully get it with Naz Reid. I think Naz Reid is fine. I think Naz Reid is a solid backup center who can play a little bit at power forward. I thought he had really big trouble in the playoffs defensively, like he sucked a lot. And there are people who are like, yeah, he'll just play over Julius Randle. He'll play over Rudy Gobert. The shooting's really good. And he was a really good shooter, and he's a fun player. There is just... And this could just be one where I'm just way off on it. Like, I'm just completely not there. Honestly, very easily that is the case. His ADP is 99. 99. Now, even for category leagues, that is outrageous to me. That's how I don't get it. For a Yahoo points league, Nas played 24 minutes a night last season. That could easily go up, but he wasn't. Like, he was 140th. He averaged 25 points. The 100th ranked player last season around that spot was like 28.5. So do we expect that just goes up? How many minutes is he actually getting behind Randle and Gobert? I guess the absence of Anderson and Towns and only replaced by Randle means there is 2 to 3 extra minutes there. That's true. But I don't know. I'm just not as in on Nas as everyone else is. Brandon Miller is ranked too high. Brandon Miller was not a top 100 points league player last season, and he was a rookie, and I do expect him to be better, but he's ranked at 59. That is just putting the cart before the horse in my mind. Brad Beal, as much as I am in on Brad Beal this season, I don't like that rank of 60. When he was going in the 80s, I'm all for it. And he's still got an ADP there. We're not doing it in the 60s. Hartenstein has a rank of 71, and this is another one of these low-usage players who gets by on efficiency of defensive stats, and that does not mean anything for points leagues. He was not a top 120 player last season, so we are not expecting 50 spots jump. Do not touch him there in points leagues. Do not touch him. Bogdan Bogdanovic has a rank of 78, and I like Bogdan a lot. I don't know that he starts. He might start. But even last season, in what was considered almost the best-case scenario, 30 minutes, 22 usage, he wasn't top 100. And yeah, he could get better easily, but 78 is a stretch. To me, that's just not the spot, I think, where Bogdan should be going. It just feels like Bogdan, to me, is more of a 90s guy, more of a 100s guy even. I'm just going to double-check exactly my listing of him. Like, I've got him, like about 100th. So I just don't like it at 78. And then we go to OG Anunoby, which is one of those ones where we know it again. He splits the middle, doesn't he? His Yahoo rank is 81. Last season, he was 117th in points leagues. This season, could he do a little bit more? I think he probably could. But I don't think we're getting that high. That is just too much. It is too far to go. And 2 more top 100 guys on Yahoo that I just don't like. And you know what they are? Low usage, high steals guards, Jalen Suggs, and Alex Caruso. 87 was Suggs' rank last season. Is his rank this season, which for category leagues feels close enough to right. It's a big upgrade, and there's even risk of that going wrong in a category league for Suggsy. But in a points league, like that's not happening. He's not getting the usage required to do that. Last season, he was 143rd in points leagues. It is just too big of a leap to consider that. And then we get to Alex Caruso, who is now in Oklahoma City. We know this. Caruso last season was 129th. Does he actually play more in OKC? Does he get more usage in OKC than he did in Chicago? I would say probably not. So I don't really want to... Rank 89 is an insane pick for a points league, and I understand why it is there. It is because they are trying to do something which is impossible to do, and that is thread the points category needle, and you cannot do it. There are going to be so many outliers either side of it, and my job is to try and point out where they exist, and your job is to know which ones not to get sucked into. And I hope that you're able to not get sucked into them. 5 more Yahoo names who are outside the top 100, but still inside the top 120, so not really last round flyers. So we're just thinking in the wrong spot. Johnny Collins has a rank of 101. I have basically all preseason been in the I don't think John Collins is going to start boat. I think they'll try Hendricks and Kessler there, and that happened in preseason game 1. We'll see what happens moving forward. But like Collins last season was what, 88th? So he's not too far off that. I just don't think he's doing anywhere near the same amount. I'm also not into Klay Thompson, who is almost surely going to see a usage dip. He was 122nd last season, Klay. He's ranked 119th now, which for category leagues, I get it. I'm still not super in on it. But his ADP is 107, and in points leagues, that's a waste. Dan Gafford has an ADP of 109, and while we know he was one of the best category league producers last season, even last season playing over 2/3 of the season for the Wizards, he was 85th in points leagues. So yeah, look, he's dropped back a bit, but there's almost no way he's able to replicate what he did in Washington this season. So we get a full season of Dallas Dan Gafford, and that's not worth it at that spot. Tyus Jones also gets by on having good assists. He gets by on having low turnovers. Last season, as a starting point guard in Washington, he was about 100th, which is okay. But in Washington, he didn't share the ball with Booker, Beal, and Durant. So at 113, I think it's a waste. And as much as I didn't like the Clint Capella pick, I also don't like picking a Okongwu at his rank of 102. Okongwu, when the first Yahoo ranks came out, was about 160th, and that was unbelievable. But like so many big men, Okongwu is not a good fantasy point producer. He might be better than this, but like we called back to earlier in the show, if there are more downsides than upsides, what are we doing? And it's not even that the upsides are super high and super hitting on it. And it's not like we're talking about last rounds as a flyer. That's just not where we're at with this. So I do not like it. Now we get to talk about ESPN. So let's talk about ESPN points leagues. The difference in the settings on these two is important. We get more points on ESPN for steals and blocks, 4 versus 3. We get a bonus for 3-pointers made. We lose points for shots made. So efficiency does matter more on ESPN. Anthony Edwards, everyone loves this guy. I know this. I know why they do. Not always. But Ant Edwards for ESPN points leagues last season was 23rd. Maybe he does a little bit more. People go, well, Towns has gone, he'll do more. Like, have you seen the way that Julius Randle plays? Wouldn't say he's particularly shy in getting shots up or having the ball in his hand. This is not replacing Karl Anthony Towns with a facsimile of Jaden McDaniels. What's Edwards' next step forward from here? What's the big leap? Because at an ADP of 9, and remember, ESPN chucks out points league specific ranks, and a rank of 10, you are expecting a lot. A rank of 10 is high. A rank of 10 was about 47 ESPN fantasy points last season. Edwards averaged 42. Has he got 5 more fantasy points in him? I'm not really sure where that comes from, because he was already 32 usage, and maybe that goes a tick up. Maybe he gets more free throws and he averages 28. That's true, but getting to that spot is tough. Like with Yahoo, Kevin Durant, I think is placed in the wrong spot. Actually, my bad. On those Anthony Edwards numbers, I gave you the wrong numbers, so I am going to give you the correct numbers on him. I actually was referring to the Yahoo scoring numbers, which is obviously incorrect. Last season, he was 27th in ESPN points leagues. So even worse, the production was down because sometimes can be a little bit inefficient. It was 49 that was 10th last season. So that's 7 fantasy points he needs to get to. Durant, with an ADP of 18 and a rank of 21, never been the best points league player. And yes, ESPN points leagues do provide more value for an efficient player like Durant. And he was 12th last season, so it's a possibility he gets here. I'm just very worried about those factors that I all detailed many times. Assist rate, free throw rate, minutes. Minutes is the big one. Minutes is huge. And that's what I'm worried about. You might think it's weird that I've put Paolo Banchero here, because we can bang on about Paolo Banchero, and we do all the time. And you hear it thrown away as a comment that everyone just accepts and understands. Paolo, it's fine. He's in point 6, he's fine here. Right? And that's a comment that we hear all the time. I'm not sure. Last season, Paolo Banchero, ESPN points leagues, was 50th. So he comes in with a rank of 28th and an ADP of 27, which, if we were talking Yahoo points, I'd actually go, that's actually bang on. That's nice. I like it. But the efficiency is punished. The defensive stuffs mean more on ESPN. Stuffs? I meant stats. They mean more. Paolo was 50th. 50th. It is weird to say that Paolo's a bust. But I think he might be. It's also weird to say that Pascal Siakam is a bust on points leagues because usually he's just better in points leagues. He's ranked 20th on their points leagues, and you know where he was last season? 40th. Okay. He also played under 32 minutes a night as a member of the Pacers. Don't know whether that holds or not. That's just all downside, no upside. I think you know what I'm going to say when we're talking about Nick Vucevic, and that's what are we doing here? I cannot get behind that. And look, I've said this before about ESPN. Don't play there is one of the number one things. Hey, also don't play on Sleeper. People ask me, hey, you should do a video on Sleeper in their lock-in format. I won't. A, it's a terrible format. B, I don't want to promote it. C, it is so much luck-based. It's luck. It's luck. Picking which game, it's luck. Anyway, luck. Vooch, last season, what are we doing? Like I know what the argument is. I just think it's incorrect. He's ranked 30th with an ADP of 42, Nick Vucevic, and guess where he was last season? I'll tell you, it wasn't 30th and it wasn't 42nd. He was 66th per game, despite playing 34 minutes a game. So at age 34, on a team that's rebuilding that might be trading him, we're expecting that? No, we're not. Well, I'm not. The argument's going to be DeRozan's gone. That's cool. Levine and Giddey are there. And they weren't last season. So, yep, absolutely avoid that one as best you can. The other one's Jalen Green. And also, I get why it is. I understand what we're talking about here. At this level, I don't quite get it. Where he's got like an absolutely ridiculous rank of like 38th for points leagues and ADP of 42. And like, hold on, because you know where he was ranked last season? 91st. It's a gigantic leap. He averaged 31 fantasy points last season. 31. If we do the equivalence, like where does that leave you? Where was he last season? Well, 41 was about the spot where that rank would suggest he needs to be. And he had a really strong stretch. But that is, again, like that is detonating on your fantasy team. A couple of other top-end guys. I don't love Don Mitchell at this spot. Numerous reasons. Knee, I don't love his knee injury. I don't love the fact that Kenny Atkinson might cut 2 to 3 minutes away from his playing time. Last season, he was 11th per game, 49 fantasy points. That's fine. So that's okay. I think there's going to be some downturns. Steals, can't rely upon him. Minutes, might lose 2. Therefore, 14 doesn't work. And then, why is D'Angelo Russell as high as he is? And maybe the argument is LeBron's taking his foot off the gas. But I don't know, stop me if you've heard me before. Has anyone heard that one being said before? And has it literally ever happened? No. I also heard Jovan Buha from the Lakers on Dunked On with Nate Duncan talking about the ball handling and Russell and being there. And he seemed to be of the opinion that they would push a little bit more through Austin Reeves than D'Angelo Russell. So take that for what it's worth. Not to say that it will happen, but the fact that it's being mentioned by Jovan means that there's risk. And Russell, at 47, when he was 60th last season, seems like a pretty bad move. It just seems too early. I don't know why we would do it. I don't know why we would go there. There's a bunch here more for ESPN in the 50 to 100 range. Rudy Gobert, don't love that one. We're sitting at ADP 50 with a rank of 52. He's not a points league guy. Mikal Bridges at 54. Not the best points league guy. Kobe White. Kobe White is probably made more for points leagues than category leagues, I would guess. But even last season, in his breakout campaign, he didn't crack the top 70, and now he's ranked 44th. And again, the argument will be DeMar DeRozan is gone. True, he is. And maybe Levine is traded, but also maybe he isn't. But Josh Giddey is there, and Lonzo Ball is back. And White I'm guessing, will play off-ball a significantly larger amount of time than he did last season. It's almost impossible that he doesn't. Giddey, Ball, Levine. DeRozan out. If they start how they start, Kobe White isn't the point guard. It's Giddey. So I don't see how he jumps up that far. Miles Bridges with a rank of 46. You could make the argument that efficiency rises for Bridges without LaMelo Ball there. Fine, fair enough. He was 57th last season. So we're expecting him to be 10 spots better with a likely usage drop and having that offset by efficiency. Almost definitely no way that works. Drew Holiday with an ADP of 70. Again, are we just overrating the Kristaps Porzingis absence? Because this man was 121st last season in ESPN points leagues. 121st. I'll say that for you again. Drew Holiday was 121st, and the man just played an extended playoff run and went to the Olympics. And is old. Will he get his usage all the way back? I doubt it. He's 34. 12, 4, and 5 and 5. What an no way. Do not touch that one. I'm pretty interested in what Valanciunas is going to do this season in Washington. Last season, it wasn't great. He averaged 28 fantasy points on ESPN. He's 120th, and we know the reasons why. Well, I hope you know the reasons why. It's the Zion fit. And he's going to be the starter in Washington. I don't think that means 30 minutes a night, but maybe it does. 53 is a crazy number. In the 90s, I'm all for it. All for it in the 90s for Valanciunas. 53, no, come on. Well, it's too high. It takes any value away and makes no real sense. Speaking of no sense, why is Klay Thompson 67th? What on earth are we expecting to happen there for the man that was 118th last season in fantasy points? Easiest fade you'll see. Or one of them anyway. Because Dan Gafford also appears at a too high level. And Gafford last season was 72nd. He's now ranked 68th. So the expectation is he is better than last season? No. Michael Porter's ranked 79th again. Why is there just so much over the topness on Porter? He was 87th last season. Okay, so the ADP is 88. Okay, but you're putting him ahead of that with a ranking. And then you got to factor Westbrook in. Or that Porter, is his back actually fine? I don't know. Buddy Hield is one I will never get. I don't understand. But this is a philosophical difference. The ESPN rankings assume that Buddy Hield is going to play 30 plus minutes a night as a starter. I do not. Buddy Hield was not a top 150 player last season. I am, of course, not sniffing Bud, Bahamian legend, Shavano Hield. I'm not getting him in the 70s. I'm not getting him in the 80s. Why would I? Even if you disagree with me and you think that Buddy is going to start, monopolize touches, take on the Klay Thompson role, why would you take him there? You wouldn't go anywhere near that. It just doesn't add up to me. One thing I criticized in the ESPN category bus video was they had a bunch of guys ranked high and they all seemed to play for similar teams or the same team. And I was like, I don't know how all of these guys can all get better by this much playing for the same team. So I just said Michael Porter, why is he pushed up that high if Russell Westbrook comes in and is now ranked 88th in points leagues? Why is that a thing? Westbrook was 118th last season. I think Westbrook's going to do more this season in Denver. But if Westbrook does more, surely that means Porter does less. Brook Lopez is at 94 with an ADP of 106. I just don't really believe in Lopez this season. Doc Rivers seemed to really impact him. And he's older and he's not a points league guy. Anthony Simons ranked at 61 on ESPN. Probably a little bit too high for me. There's risk of tank. There's risk of injury. And he's inefficient and doesn't generate anything defensively, so he doesn't have that to back him up. And even last season, which was fine as a season, he was 65th. But if I'm going to take the risk into it, that just doesn't work. I don't like Bogdan at 86 as much as I do like Bogdan as a player. That is, again, just topping out, I think. And like I said, with Jalen Green, who was a little bit too high, why is Amen Thompson at 89? How can both of those things happen? Unless they expect that Dylan Brooks is gone immediately or is playing 20 minutes a night. Amen Thompson was 142nd last season and we expect to leap up. That is a big leap and I don't think it's happening. I'm also not really sure why we would bother with Malcolm Brogdon with a rank of 100. What is the point of that? Brogdon, last season, he was a top 100 player. But they've already said Jordan Poole's starting. So Brogdon, will he start or come off the bench? Or will he get injured? Or will he play for this team? Pick 100 is still a useful pick. And in a 12-team league, that's 2/3 through a draft. We're not interested in that. Bobby Portis is ranked 97th. You're drafting, again, like I already said, Brook Lopez was ranked too high. Now your backup to him is ranked too high as well. And that both of those can't be true, I don't think. So yeah, we're not touching Bob there, who was 125th last season. And then Clint Capella, who's ranked at 98th. This is, again, just me assuming there is downside to Clint. I don't think he's a particularly strong points league player, and I don't love him in that position. I'm not super against that, but I don't love it. There are 6 names I want to talk about who are currently either ranked or with an ADP outside the top 100, but inside the top 120 on ESPN. And we'll start with the big ragu, Dante DiVincenzo. He did start the first preseason game for the Wolves. I know that. That was a game without Randall and with 9 minutes of Conley and without Edwards. So I'm not going to read huge amounts into that. Last season, he was 96th, averaging 31 fantasy points, and I'm not sure that he's going to be doing the same thing. I don't mind getting him there, but I'd rather get him in the 130s if I'm going to do it. And then Grayson Allen's ranked at 108. Allen, who's almost assuredly losing his spot to Tyus Jones. Also, I think they've got Tyus Jones ranked too high. Don't know how you can have both of those guys ranked too high, but here we are. Grayson Allen last season, in what was a really strong season for Grayson Allen, did not crack the top 100. He did not hit 30 fantasy points. And he's ranked at literally the same spot he was last season. And I do not think that there is any way that we are getting the 34 minutes a night that we got last season from Grayson Allen. Jaime Jaquez is ranked at 110. This is just under the assumption that Jimmy Butler is going to miss a bunch of time, I'm guessing. And actually, he's jumped up to 102. They've actually updated that. He's jumped up to 102 in those rankings. So, yeah, that's too high, man. You are, and I know they're down on Butler. That is burning a useful pick. PJ Washington Jr. ranked at 110. ADP 120. You got Clay that high. You got Kyrie. You got Luka. Where is PJ touching it? Both of these guys, Clay and PJ, can't be this good. So I'm not touching either of them. I think they're both too high. Reed Shepherd, like another one. Jalen Green, Amen Thompson. Why is Reed pushed up to be that guy? Like, again, who is the guy that is just missing out entirely to allow Reed to be 111th ranked player? I don't know how it's possible that this can happen. And then Dennis Schroeder, who I don't know whether Schroeder starts for the Nets. I think Ben Simmons is going to start, but they could start together. Schroeder last season started for the Raptors. He finished 110th in points leagues. He's ranked 104th. I would not have a level of confidence that he's going to do that again. And that is busts. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Things change. ADPs adjust. Ranks change. Just take what you think is going to happen. Look for upsides. Look for downsides. Understand there's less positional and fit stuff with points leagues that just doesn't really exist. You just want who scores more points. But be really cautious of looking at guys who are expected to just significantly outperform last season when maybe the path to do that isn't quite there. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button on this video. Like it, comment. You know how it works. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.